Hello guys, this is Low Tech Gaming Al. Now, I want to get my opinions on this, as I feel like this is a heavily discussed topic amongst at least the wardens. I'm not sure about what the colonials are talking about. Probably something along the lines of pancakes or something, I have no idea. Anywho, there seems to be the idea that battle tanks can replace light tanks entirely on the war scale, essentially. So, in a sense, the idea is to instead put all our efforts and resources into producing these, bigger but superior tanks that have more firepower, essentially. And this is a reasonable claim, but you have to look another step into the manufacturing process of vehicles as a whole to get the giant picture as to why this isn't the case. Now, you have to look at all the different phases of making a vehicle and getting it on the battlefield. You have to look at the production of the blueprint itself, the production of the vehicle, its ability to get to the front line, and then the ability to give it ammunition, as well as the ability to actually give it a crew that's competent. For example, if we look at the field artillery. Field artillery is very powerful. It's useful. Its blueprint can be made fairly easily. Where it fails is the fact that it is not easy to get it to the front lines, as it requires two people, not one, two people to get to the front lines, and it is ridiculously slow. But on top of that, it requires a competent crew to even be effective, essentially, even if you have the ammunition for it. Looking at light tanks, blueprints can be made relatively easily. You really only need one person to get it to the front line, and while a competent crew would be nice, there's more leeway because of the fact that it has a good amount of durability behind it, essentially. To the point where its effectiveness in combat can sometimes be compensated for it. Maybe about 25% of the time. 75% of the time, if you have a noobish crew inside a light tank, it's just going to get killed. Now, if we look at battle tanks, it has basically almost the same features as the light tank in terms of it only needs one person to get it to the front line, essentially. So it's easy to get to the front line. Resource-wise, so it's about 50 RMATs more than the light tank. The shell costs are roughly the same. I think it's a little bit more expensive, but on a grand scale, so they're roughly the same. The biggest issue comes down to acquiring the blueprint, and this is what indefinitely kills battle tank production. In order to make a battle tank, you need a battle tank blueprint, and the battle tank blueprint costs not only some scrap like every other blueprint imaginable, but it costs 40 tech pods. 40 tech pods. Now, everyone should know that tech pods are probably one of the hardest resources to obtain in the game, essentially. I did a little experiment. I went to 12 different component fields, and besides acquiring like over 1,000, components, I acquired 4 tech pods. Just 4, a tenth of what was needed, and it took me about 20 minutes to do that. So, you could see how it would take, several hours to actually acquire like 3 or 4, maybe even 5, maybe less or so, depending on the RNG you get, essentially. But it would require a huge amount of time for an individual to get the tech box required. And anyone short of a clan is not going to be dedicated enough to do that. So even I myself find myself only scrapping for maybe an hour or so. Scrapping as in getting either B mats, R mats, or explosive materials or so. I still do this in order to help the war effort, but I can only do it for like an hour or so. And that's with me having Foxhole on one monitor, and then having like something else playing in the background, or so maybe a YouTube video, or maybe Netflix or something. But with this perspective in mind, oh, and also one more thing, while all the other blueprints give you at least 3 or so per blueprint cost or so, so you put up like, I don't know, 150 scrap or so for a light tank blueprint, and you get 3 of them in 6 hours. You're gonna have to put up, I think, 200 scrap, 40 tech pods, and you're only gonna get 1 battle tank blueprint. And on top of that, it's gonna take you a day to get that one. So roughly, if we were to do the simple math here, essentially, you're essentially able to get way more light tanks produced, or so, way more blueprints, and you can get them from anyone. All they need is scrap, so they don't need any tech pods. So in logistical sense, you can get probably 10, 15 light tanks out for every 1 battle tank, perhaps. I'm not going to do the math for it because that would be ludicrous, and on top of that, you would have to determine how you want to weigh this in. Do you want to weigh it in with time or with effort, essentially? And with the RNG of getting tech pods to sell, time would be more of a higher factor in something that could not be exactly calculated. But as it stands, battle tanks, as they are implemented in the game as of now, with the logistical side of making blueprints for them, they cannot replace light tanks. Now, unless the battle tanks, in of themselves, are able to single-handedly change the tide of battle for like an entire region, even if faced with multiple different light tanks, and maybe battle tanks might be the only thing that can kill other battle tanks. Who knows? We don't have any combat data on them, so we have little tidbits from the dev server, but that's about it. So I'll be interested to see how this works out in the next couple of days, as I think the cloners will probably have battle tanks out probably by the 23rd or so. So probably, yeah, in 2 days, essentially. But I firmly believe that unless the battle tank is the be-all end-all and is able to single-handedly wipe out fortresses, essentially, basically a KV2 of the game, I do not believe that it will be able to replace light tanks, as light tanks will essentially have the numbers advantage over them, and the damage per second between the battle tanks and all the light tanks you can make will be minuscule at best. So it's basically the same argument of should I make a bunch of Panzer IVs or should I make a single Tiger, essentially. Sure, the Tiger can do a lot of damage, but essentially if I lose that Tiger, that's it. But if I lose a couple of light tanks, I have more I can use to replace them, and the cost factor of losing them is much lower than it would be for losing that Tiger. So we'll just have to see how this plays out when battle tanks start showing up, which won't be until the 23rd, I'm predicting, for the Colonials, and probably sometime either on Christmas Day or the 26th or so for the Wardens, I'm predicting. Yeah, we need to get it together, guys. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, take care, and I will catch you guys next time.